All right, thanks for tuning in for today. We're going to talk about manure management and a campaign that I'm putting together right now to raise money for a local nonprofit that has a big problem. Now, a lot of farms have this problem. They have manure, they have bedding and waste that must be processed in the proper fashion. It must be handled correctly, or it's going to be a big pain in the butt. First off, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and so what we're talking about here is both a subscriber fundraiser, subscriber drive, and a fundraiser to build a manure bunker and handle the complete manure management of a local nonprofit. And I'm going to share why this is important. So we advocate here that if you're going to have a small farm or homestead, that you're a part of the community. One of the reasons we might anchor down is so that we can serve our community, so that we can be a part of the different things that are going on around here. And as you may know, or may not know, I have a couple organizations that I support. It's a couple organizations that I believe in their mission. I believe what they're doing is great and it's helping people. And you'll notice that many of the videos that I have here on this channel feature these locations. And so once we're monetized on YouTube or on different channels, we're actually going to send those proceeds for specific videos to those nonprofits. But also, we're going to help them solve problems that they face. So a lot of organizations, in this particular one, this is not unusual, but the Infinity Acres Ranch is an organization I've talked about before. I mentioned them frequently in the sense of that their mission is strong. They're highly engaged in the community. They're serving people. As it says here, an exotic and domestic animal education program for the community, and they're doing great work. They're making possible the local 4-H. They've got camels, they've got goats, they've got all kinds of exotic animals. Look at this little goat. This is not a goat. I'm sorry, this is a camel. And alpaca. And the biggest problem that arises when you have all these different animals is not an unusual problem to you. Because you know, if you're starting a small farm and you've got animals, but it's the manure. And so what I'm looking to put together for this organization, it's going to be about 7K. We're going to talk a little bit about the problem, which is the manure and the bedding and all the bulk materials that are necessary to run a very clean operation. They run a very clean operation. They've got hundreds of students come through a year. They've got resident students or folks that are adults with disabilities that come by, and this is their community. They've got buildings that are dedicated to education, and so shoveling poo and building piles of poo is not their number one priority. It is not something that adds value other than being a very clean location. It's not something that adds value to the underlying mission of the organization. So when you're watching this, you know, and I'll ask you at the end to raise your hand and let me know if you're interested in contributing to this type of project, because we're going to do video during the construction. We're gonna show you before and afters. But this is not an unusual problem for small farms and homesteads as well. So what I hope to give you here is an educational program is so that you understand what we're doing here. Now, a lot of folks say, well, let's not worry about poop. Let's just make a giant pile of poop. It will decompose on its own. But what we are ignoring is the fact that the materials as they decompose are going to create a large amount of methane. Methane's a greenhouse gas. Methane smells. A lot of horse stalls. I used to muck out horse stalls when I was a kid. That was a job that I had. I'd go over to the neighbor's house and muck out their stalls. I got paid to muck out the stalls. My sister got free horseback riding lessons. But if a horse has been in there for a little bit, maybe it's been raining outside and they've been peeing a lot in their stall, you're going to have this ammonia smell. If the manure gets a little bit dried out, then wet again, you're going to have that composted methane smell. And I keep telling you that no small farm or homestead, no ecotourism location, nothing that has animals, small zoo, whatever you have, should smell, because it's offensive to your guests. And so they run a clean shop there. They're constantly mucking things out. Volunteers are constantly doing the work they need to do. But again, it leads to the problem that you might be having as well, is that we're going to have a large amount of manure. Now, there are many ways to manage the manure. In fact, here's the EPA's guidelines on managing manure. And here it says who's responsible to report emissions. In the case of a small farmer homestead, you may not individually have the volume that could trigger the need to mention emissions. So I'm just showing you this here because it's something need to be aware of. And it could be uncovered anaerobic lagoons. Now that's going to be a pit that you push all the manure into. Some people do it that way. But when it rains, now that pit has got water in it. You start getting anaerobic activity, which is just pumping out methane. Now, we've talked about putting that into a biodigester and capturing the methane. That's not suitable for most locations. See, in this case, volunteers are gathering the manure up and throwing it in a pile. And of course, they've got it contained, they've got it out of the way, but it becomes a very big pile. Camels, goats, chickens, exotic birds. It's a mixed manure. It's the mixed manure that um, they talk about in permaculture. That I have, like I said in previous videos, every time this happens, I'm literally having a stroke. Bill Mollison used to talk about the very best manure was the manure from a petting zoo or from a small zoo with multiple species of animals. But the point of it being is that it's a recognized hazard. Um, See, solid manure storage. If you're just making a pile, when it rains, it's going to run off a lot of those nutrients. Now, in the permaculture mindset, we want to capture those nutrients. And so a bunker system, and by the way, here is the USDA. There'll be links in the description. Uh, Livestock practices, that's more at the scale of a small farm. But the manure has value. And so if we use a bunker system, and this is just one example, you can do a different varieties of a bunker system. You can have wood, you can have stone, you can have a lot of things. You're looking at spending twelve to $20,000. Now, this is a bunker system I really like because it has a roof on it, so you don't have the water runoff. You have the multiple bays, and because it has a roof, some of the bays can be used for storage. So if there's an empty bay, because you can do a 3 or 4 bay system, and it might take a year to fill up one bay. The other bays can be used for storage of hay and feed materials or receive bulk goods. And then, once something's full, you let it rest a little bit while the next one's getting filled up. And then now you literally have a composting at scale. So now the manure, as it breaks down, rather than pushing off a lot of methane, the manure is breaking down and turning into a viable or usable soil, releasing more of those nutrients to use as fertilizer. But you still got a giant pile of poo. A giant pile of poo. So what we're going to talk about here is a scheme that I've come up with, and I call it scheme because it's something that this is how we solve the problem, but how do we pay for it? If it's something that's cost $10,000 to $20,000 to do, because by the way, you don't necessarily need a concrete pad, you don't necessarily need a gravel pad. The drainage is important. Containing the materials vertically instead of a pile that tends to have 30-degree or 45-degree sides. And then, of course, every time somebody hauls off that manure, um, it costs the nonprofit time and effort. So right now they're selling the manure at $10 a scoop. You bring your equipment or your trailer or your truck, and they will scoop the manure into your vehicle. And you can take it off. Seems like a great deal, but it's a better deal for the person hauling the manure off than it is for the nonprofit because it disrupts their day. It takes up space. They have a truck driving through an area of the facility where there are a lot of animals. And so, of course, if you've got classroom programs there, if you've got um, concerts and alternative events, there's a scheduling issue. So what is very often the best thing to do is to set up a manure management facility. And I use the word facility because it is a designated place where all the manure goes to. Now, like I mentioned, it's also a convenient receiving location. So if you've got one bay and you're just throwing all the manure in there, you don't have the benefit of the compost effect that reduces the greenhouse gases, reduces the smells, reduces a lot of the issues, actually reduces the size of the pile if you just have a one bay. And then you don't have the benefit of putting um, the materials that you might receive. So when I receive hay here, I receive 100 bales of hay. Okay, 100 bales of hay is pretty big. So the bay system. So we almost have a good, this right here is the good, a single bay. Better is a triple bay. And best is a covered facility. Notice there's sidewalls on it. You can uh, drive your tractor right up into it to push the manure back or to stack the manure. But if we can turn that manure into a lighter weight compost, a more homogeneous material, we can then sell that to the marketplace. Now, again, even if you build the base system, a nonprofit is really usually pretty tight on space. We wouldn't want to sell individual loads because you don't want people coming over your pickup truck and then having to pull the tractor out and everything like that. But you're more likely to be able to now sell bulk. So I'm giving you some concepts here. I want to show you how, as a small farm or as a homestead, you can help solve problems in your community. Now, you might say, well, I'll just solve problems by going over there and picking up all their manure. But remember, their underlying problem is disruption. They don't need a big giant truck or a truck. One time I went over there to get manure and I brought my truck and trailer over there and they had to open two different gates. They had to make sure all the animals were put up. I had to do a U-turn in a very tight little space. They had to go get their tractor and pull it out. It was an hour-long endeavor to pick up 2 cubic yards of manure. Now, an organization here that is a hauling company, I contacted them. They went down and got some manure. They set up and were there for the day and pulled 7 tandem dump truck loads of manure out of that space. But even that was limited because the heavy equipment on the area kind of compacted things, and so they ended up having to do some grading afterwards. But there's still probably 5 loads there. Now that it took them a few years to build that pile, but again, if we have a manure management system, every year a truck can come over, take all the manure. Now they have an open bay. So remember, our good is single bay, our better is 3 bays, and our best is a covered 4 bay. Now, again, this is a fundraiser. I'm not sitting on $10,000 to $20,000 that I can just give away to somebody as much as I'd like to, as much as I support the nonprofit activities of the Infinity Acres Ranch. And that's why I'm coming to you today to say, look, they have a problem that many small farms and homesteads have. You might have the problem of manure. And with scale, depending on how much manure you're going to collect in a year, you can have a single bay system to put all the manure in one place, stack it vertically instead of having a pile that comes out. Now, this single bay would be better if it had aeration underneath it. So you can we did a composting video a while back and we had these pipes underneath with had holes in the pipes, and that allows airflow up underneath it. So instead of having an anaerobic bacteria that smells, an anaerobic bacteria that's very wet and sticky, you now have an aerobic bacteria, meaning with oxygen, that is going to start breaking down that pile more consistently. It's going to be a hotter breakdown. It's going to reduce the size of the pile better. So if you have a single base system, you can put the aeration underneath it. You can dump the manure in. Now, I'm thinking processes. In this particular nonprofit, they have many different stalls and different areas that get mucked out. And so they're going to go through the process of mucking out the area, and then they're going to add fresh bedding, fresh straw. Now, some of this bedding could be bulk wood chips, or it could be bulk wood shavings, and a 4 bay system with one of the bays reserved for their bulk materials would allow them to bring in the bulk materials, wood chips, pine shavings, a lot of chipped material, straw. Bring that in, store it dry because dry materials absorb better than wet materials. Now, moist materials reduce the smell while they're absorbing. But again, a single bay open still has the problem with rainfall. It still has the problem with getting saturated with water and having the bacteria build up. And then we start getting to the area here. Now, some entrepreneurial person might say, "Well, I'm going to come get your manure and I'm going to take it to my property and I'm going to compost it and then I'll sell the compost." They might even have an arrangement. I just wrote an email over to this organization. I'm going to wholesale their compost to a couple haulers, and then we're going to have some publicity around it. By the way, my background is marketing. And so we're going to have some publicity around it, but I can only store a certain volume of material to be sold as compost because I'm the state of Virginia. I'm going to give you the search right here now. Um, so bulk compost facility guidelines. So if I'm going to have a solid waste facility, and that's what compost facility is considered in the state, in most states, if I'm going to go over there and gather all their manure and I'm going to have a bulk, I'm going to have a 4-bay system or a 5-bay system. And by the way, this 4-bay system is not a composting facility. It is a temporary holding for animal manure. But if I have a volume of this, so when I was in the city of Martinsville, I was collecting 2,500 pounds of coffee grounds and orange peels a year. If I had a certain amount above that, I'd have to have a composting facility because these conditions are required. You have to have, and I know I'm not reading off this list, but you got to have a sanitary condition. You got to be able to store this material in a form that it's not going to harm streams. It's not going to cause waste. Now, again, if you just got a pile of turds out there that you're letting grass grow on, and every time you muck out the goats or every time you muck out the dairy, you just put it in a pile somewhere, that is not even a good solution. That's going to cause more harm than good. It's going to cause frustration issues. You're not able to capture those nutrients to put them around fruit trees or growing systems or spread it on a field so that you can grow more hay or more grass. You're going to have frustration. As you can see, like at the some of the other organizations we work with, they don't muck out their chicken stalls anymore. They don't even have deep bedding. They take the chickens out on the hay field and let the chickens manure on the hay field, and then they constantly move them so that we're not impounding manure, which causes the challenges in sanitary conditions. It's either going to cause you to have to do more work, like this particular nonprofit is busting their butt. They've got volunteers, wonderful volunteers that are out there mucking the stalls and cleaning up things. But again, there's a point where it becomes an environmental issue. And so you're going to have the construction of a facility. You're going to have, at a certain volume, operations plans, inspection plans, hazard and safety. So you can't just go ahead and go pick up the material and take it someplace else because now the other person has liability. And so I have access to a farm that has space, and if I brought over all the manure from this facility to process it, to maybe do worm farming, to create fertilizer, to sell it to other organizations. By the way, when a few years ago, I worked with the Averett University Equestrian Center and arranged for their manure to be removed every year, and it turned out to be, I think our first run was 135 cubic yards for each farms. There were 2 farms in the deal, and then the hauler got some bulk material for them to go and sell. But again, if you've got an equestrian center, if you've got a petting zoo, if you've got an ecotourism location, a horsing facility, if you've got just your own small farm or homestead, you got to be mindful that when you reach a certain volume, your state is going to have laws, rules, and regulations because that manure is off gassing. And by the way, here's all the laws, rules, and regulations. So while it sounds great to just haul off their material, we have to look at the underlying problem. So let's go from the underlying problem is that most animals, you're going to put hay in the front of them, feed in front of them, and they're going to eat it, and they're just going to poop it all out. Okay, there's an old comic about the feed horse hay poop out joke. I shouldn't really go, but basically it just goes in one end and comes out the other. They anyway. The point I'm making is that it's a problem we're all familiar with to the point that we don't know effective solutions. And so that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring an effective solution to a worthy nonprofit so that they can save time, save effort, improve the safety of their location, and then ultimately we're doing it in such a way that helps you understand how these systems work. So a good system would be a single bay, and notice how they've got block walls. Okay, you can do a single bay and use pallet wood if you want, but when you start getting to volume, which happens very quickly, you need to have the block walls. In this location, I've described to you in a number of videos where we go from waste hay with the goats, and that goes in as bedding as ducks. Then we have that deep bedding with the ducks. We get it turned over and fluffed up by the chickens. That then becomes mulch on the garden. That system works, but the scale here is so tiny, like a backyard garden, that even at this facility, I will need to have some kind of containment. Now, the 3-bay containment works well because it gives you a place to put this year's manure. And then once that's full, it gives you a new bay to start over to get the next year's manure. And then by the time the second bay is full, the first bay can be emptied out. And then your third bay is for your untreated shredded wood chips, sawdust, other materials that's going to go in as bedding. Now, you're going to see this a lot of times at a facility that maybe has 2 or 3 horses, and the bays are always wide enough for 2 tractor passes. What does that mean? It means that you can get your tractor into the bay and turn it around if you have to, or that you have 2 shovel whiffs next to each other. Now, most tractors, and you can see the tractor in this picture right here, those wheels stick out a little bit further than the scoop. So you want to be able to go into the middle and have access on both sides. You want to be able to pull in and kind of 3-point around into it if you have to. You want to be able to back into it and use a blade to scrape it out if you have to. But the key of it is that the bays are large enough, not necessarily for the manure you're going to put in them, but for the equipment that you're working with. Now, ladies, this doesn't necessarily give you an excuse to get more horses or to get more goats or to get more llamas, camels, and other things, but just understand that the bay is sometimes going to be bigger than your material. But if you're regularly cleaning out a bay and you've got 3 of them, and it takes you a year to fill up one bay, that material can get a tarp over it, it can compost down, and then you could actually end up with valuable compost to use on property. Or in the case where you have a large number of animals and maybe it fills up in 6 months, you have the second bay to start putting material in, and then you can have that compost, or that it's not really compost, the manure, hauled off to a farm or an aggregator or somebody like that. That's the way the system used to work. If you had a couple hundred acres and you get manure, you could use a manure spreader and just put it on your fields. And it's ideal to have it bulk removed rather than having people come in. Because I tell you, there are articles out there that tell you how to make money with manure. They tell you about how you can compost with it, how you can do vermicastings, how you can sell it raw. You can put it around your fruit trees. Manure is a valuable resource, but to have people come over every day, now you have the liability issue. Remember, I got a risk management background as well. And so we don't want the liability issue, but we also want to maximize our ability to store materials. Now, you can still put the pipes in, the aeration pipes, underneath one of these bays, load it up with manure, pull the pipes out, turn it one time, get the heat back up, turn it again, get the heat back up, and then in 90 days, you could have cubic yards of compost, and then maybe you can sell it to the marketplace. But here's the problem. These rules and regulations say that once you have a certain volume of manure or compost on your facility, it's considered solid waste. And now there's requirements for solid waste. And you can try to drill down. So Virginia, and we're in Virginia, you put your state in there, bulk compost, uh, facility guidelines, but bulk compost sales laws is going to be details about your state. And again, if I'm selling bulk material to other farms, there are different rules than if I'm selling it to consumers. I tend to focus business to business. Okay, so here's the composting laws in Virginia. If you start selling compost to the general public and you're advertising that you've got compost for sale, I know you see it everywhere, but somebody could say, "Hey, have you stored it correctly?" They could do a fecal test on it. They could look for and find E. coli and other things. So again, the 3-base system allows you to age the manure longer, so you're less likely to have these issues, and not have the requirements for all weather roads, for systems in place to reduce the manure. You don't have to build out windrows and things like that. You can have the multiple bays, but we got to call it what it is. It is animal waste. It's farm manure. But having the multiple bays allows you to get a little more age on it. It's great if you can put this manure in your garden. It is possible to have too much manure in your garden, but the other bays can be used for your bulk dry materials that are going to be used to put in. Because again, hay goes in the horse's mouth, pennies come, dollars go in, pennies come out, and then you even have the cost of storage. But your bays are going to be out of the way. And then your dry bedding goes in. They pee and poop on it, like I talk about all the time. I give the goats fresh hay, and within 24 hours, they've peed on it. No matter what, even if you put it in a rack, they're going to find a way to pull it on the ground and then pee on it. My point being is that now you're solving the manure problem. Okay, this is why this stuff's so important. This is why we do these presentations. But you're also gaining a benefit of the storage of bulk material. It is $3 a scoop for sawdust here in my area. That's about a yard of material. Now, if you buy individual bags, those individual bags are about $3 for 6 cubic feet. I can get a whole yard, and I don't a yard. What's the cubic feet of a yard? I should know this off the top of my head, but folks, I want to make sure it's 27 cubic foot. So for $3, I could get 27 cubic feet, or I could get 6. But if I'm getting bulk loads of sawdust, bulk loads of shredded wood chips, bulk loads of material, I got to have a place to put it. And so another bay will give me a place to put it. But if I have a 2-bay system and the first bay fills up with manure and the second bay is where all my dry bedding is, then I don't have a place to put the new manure, and now it's all a cluster. So we got a 3-bay system. Do you see what I'm looking at here? Now, sawdust that's a little bit moist, shredded materials, shredded hay. There's a lot of different things you can use as bedding that you can get access to in bulk. When we work with clients, we help you get the vendor sources so you can get this stuff. And by the way, we go big or we go home. I'd rather get a truckload, 2 yards. It can fit in the back of a pickup truck. I'd rather get 2 yards of material for $6 than 12 cubic feet of material for $6. And I don't mind putting it in a pile somewhere because we use sawdust for the dry toilets. We use sawdust for some of the duck stuff. But also, this is suitable for storing straw. You can get bales of straw in a 3-bay system. Your third bay is going to have dry materials. You can put it up on pallets, for example, so you can keep airflow up underneath it. And then you put a silage tarp over top of it or some kind of tarp that will keep the rain off of it. There's some nice tarps for hay that will keep the rain from coming through, but moisture can get out. And now that third bay is storing bulk material. Now, how do we go best? Let's talk about best because, again, go big or go home. Many small farms or homestead, and by the way, every one of these designs scales. If you're not using a tractor and you're just shoveling it out, a 12 by 12 space, it might be fine. A 6 by 6 space might be fine. A 6 by 8 space might be fine. The point being, in the best solution is that we have a roof over everything. Now, we may have to add moisture to our compost or if we're going to go all the way in compost, but if we're just putting manure in there, there's going to be enough moisture in it every day to fill one of these bays up with the manure. Now, these bays have little planks on the side. They could go higher. Typically, a 3-bay system is going to have 3 walls that are solid stone because we're going to be pushing in there with a tractor. So we don't want to accidentally push out the back wall. And so this is why these things cost $20,000, $30,000. But we want to be able to push in the material or stack the material and be mindful in case when you got volunteers working, you want them to be able to just dump the material in the front of the bay. And then maybe once a week, you take the tractor and you scoop that up and you just stack the pile a little bit so you can get more material in there. But the 4-bay system is going to give you at least one bay that is always empty. Now, you can keep moving the bays. So you can start with bay 1 and fill that up in the first year. Then you start putting things in bay 2, which you're filling up in the second year. Bay 3 is dry materials, but bay 4 might be where you start the next new batch, while the first bay is emptied out and hauled off somewhere. And again, this is why we want to be able to clear out an entire bay all at one time, because this is not about turning compost. This is not about taking the manure and put from one bay and putting it in the next bay. We're stacking, because this is not the primary function of a place that has a large number of animals. We're stacking it up. We're containing it. We're making sure that it doesn't get rancid. We're making sure that it doesn't significantly off gas. We're making sure that it follows the state and federal guidelines for having a volume of material in place, and making sure that we can cover it up and keep the water from running off. But more importantly, is that if one of these bays is typically empty most of the year, now again, we're switching through bays. So we might have bay number 1 filling up this year. Bay number 2 has pallets on the floor and it has hay in it. But once all that hay's done, the next load of hay that showed up went in bay number 3. See, now we're thinking more systems. Now we're thinking more, not mechanically, but we're thinking about the process of doing things. And so number 1 is filling up with manure. Number 2 has got our spring shipment of hay. Number 3 is going to be our hay over the winter. Number 4 might even have additional hay over the winter. But now number 2 is empty, and that's where we start putting in manure because bay number 1 is full. And see, a lot of people don't believe me. I can make your life easier using processes, using best management practices. And I'm not ever against having your because it comes down here. It's talking about having an operations plan. I have an operations plan for any property that I'm managing. Have an inspection plan. Okay. These things do require maintenance. If your roof's leaking, if there's other things, you're spending $30,000 on a building, $20,000 on a building, and now the roof's leaking. We want to fix that now rather than later. That's why when we do these fundraisers, I'm looking to raise maintenance costs. And in this case, the maintenance cost is selling the manure in bulk and then cutting these folks a check once a year for that manure, and then ultimately doing some kind of marketing promotion, doing some kind of recognition ceremony, doing some kind of publicity in order for the public to know that this is happening. And we have a hauler involved, and we have the labor, and we have the farm where it's going to, and then ultimately we have some kind of income to pay for all this stuff so that they can continue to get additional materials. Now, even the most careful farm needs to have some kind of health and safety plan, because we are impounding large amounts of multi-species manure, some of which may or may not have vaccines. Some of it may or may not be healthy at the time with the manure drops. Some of it might be, for example, bird manure and mixed in with horse manure or llama manure. Uh, we do need to have a health and safety plan, which means this particular facility has to be off to the side somewhere. It has to be out of the way. Can't necessarily just be off the parking lot, but it needs to be accessible so that you can get your equipment in there. Because when you're at a volume of, so we did about 8 cubic yards of compost by hand, and that was probably the limit of what we should have been doing by hand. And this is in an urban setting. The material is mostly grass clippings and uh, leaves, and then we of course had vegetable matter from the garden and things like that, household vegetable matter, organic waste like that. And then we had the 2,500 pounds of coffee grounds, orange peels. Some people say you can't compost orange peels, but you can if you have enough volume. But we're talking about farm scale composting like we have in the program called Composting Made Easy. But again, in a case like this where you got volunteers working, we don't want the rocks in there. We don't want the uh, maybe there's some trash, the hay bale bindings. It could be an old horseshoe. It could be a lot of different things. An emergency contingency plan. We talk about this at the farm safety stuff, and then of course a landscaping plan, because a lot of times you can hide this kind of four-base system kind of off to the side. You can put some landscaping around it. You can make it accessible only to the people that are authorized to use it. And then if you notice on this particular system with the different bays, you can actually park some equipment in front of here. And so you can have it as a nice little lot where you're parking equipment. And if you just happen to have one of those bays open, you can even park your tractor in the bay. But essentially, these systems, after maybe 3 or 4 years, are going to be using all four bays. Even if it's just to receive your bulk hay, or to receive a bunch of round bales, or to receive materials away from things, which you're then going to come over with your tractor to connect with it. So when you're installing one of these facilities, I like to see this on the incoming road. So if you're spreading the manure on your fields, you're going to move the manure as quickly as possible onto the fields after it's been kind of turned a little bit to make it homogeneous so that it spreads more easily with your manure spreader. Or you're going to have this someplace where you can get a like a tandem dump in there to just remove all the manure at once. If this is 22 cubic yards or 13 cubic yards, you're keeping in mind for the equipment you're using. If it's 13 cubic yards, somebody can come over and put that all in one vehicle at a time. At most, you're looking at an hour. Rather than an hour to fill up 2 cubic yards, you're filling up 13 cubic yards. And again, like I said, you could actually put hedges around this to make it look all nice. You can have it with this a little gravel road that goes out to it. And again, as long as it's accessible to keep adding the manure. So maybe you've got your tractor at a barn and you fill the bucket up of material, and then it just drives around the corner and dumps it in the bay. Or maybe you've got a side by side, or you've got people are bringing their wheelbarrows out of the different stalls, and then that material is stacked into thrown into the back of a pickup truck. And then the pickup truck comes around and they drop it in the side manure area. I want to see people getting away from having the manure near the animals because again, there is a pathogen awareness that you've got to have. There is for example, hoof rot. If you've got somebody with hoof rot, that hoof rot can stay in the soil for more than a year. Common wart. We talked about, we have a goat here with common wart. We've got a quarantine. That quarantine space itself has to stay quarantined for a year because it can get into the soil. But if we were hauling manure out of there and putting it in a manure pile, and it was not properly managed manure pile, that manure pile could be festering that kind of thing. So for example, this nonprofit, I was offering to pick up all their material, move it to this farm here, and then I would process it for worm castings and compost for on use here. I can't have that outside manure come to my farm and then be anywhere near the goats. Now, that's because of zoological issues where, well, it couldn't be near the chickens either. Couldn't be near the ducks because if their farm has an issue, which it may or may not, we don't know. Um, we don't want to contaminate our animals. We don't want to contaminate our waterways. So again, this program is about education on how to manage your manure. And again, you can do it at scale. Like I said, it's good to just have a single place to put the manure. You could have wooden walls on this just to go vertical. You could have some aeration underneath it using pipes to compost it. And then once this thing is composted, you take it out and put it in your garden. But the animals are not going to wait until you empty this area. You're just going to keep adding more stuff to it. And because you're not allowing it to get to the composting cycle, you're not getting the results that are necessary to reduce emissions, to reduce runoff, to reduce all the other issues. And the three-base system's good, but the four-base system is better. Now, which one of these are we going to build at this particular nonprofit? We're raising money to do at least a three-base system because for their particular footprint, a three-base system is going to work great. And it's probably not going to be as big as what's in this picture. However, if you see this is beneficial, I would love to get a four-base system done. So we're going to make sure the footprint supports a four-base system with a roof because again, bulk storage, storing of dry bedding. So think about this. So you're emptying out the stalls. You're throwing all that waste into the bucket of your tractor. It fills the bucket of the tractor. You haul that tractor over, you dump that material out, you scoop up dry material, take it back to the stalls, empty the dry material into the stalls, fill the bucket back up again, head back out. Do you see how that's so much easier than wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow? It's so much easier than having all these materials just dumped on the ground somewhere because, and I get this all the time. I can only dump on the ground with a wheelbarrow. I can't dump at the top of the hill like I can with a bucket. Now, for my site, I don't need a lot of equipment. I'm going to keep this at a smaller scale, but still, if I was impounding manures, I want to impound vertically, and we use a round cattle panel that's been put around for our farm scale composting. But again, that's a composting operation at a very small scale, and I have a very small number of animals, and I have no large animals. Now, if these were cattle out in a field, we could drag the field to spread out the manure after chickens have picked through it, and then none of this would be necessary. But for a lot of the folks who are subscribers, you've got an urban farm, you've got a suburban farm, you've got a small farm or homestead. 5 acres is about what most folks have, and so this type of bunker or three bay system is going to work best for you. It's the most versatile type of approach. Now, can you use Jersey barriers? I don't know if you guys know what those are. You can use Jersey barriers, and so your system could be as simple as, and again, I don't want you to be scared because you could just put up a few of these. And the Jersey barriers, you can get them as it's called precast concrete, and very often you can get them used. Now, the thing about a Jersey barrier is you are going to have this little bit of gap underneath here where liquids can come out. You don't necessarily have to fill that gap up so much as just being mindful that it is there. And so when and you also, they're not straight up walls. So this little hip, you got to be mindful of this little hip. So if you're going in there to scrape out materials, you want to make sure nobody shoved any wood through the bottom that you're going to catch on and disrupt the jersey. And you also want to make sure that you don't clip this side here if you're shoveling through materials. But you can literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jersey barriers to get your initial 3-bay system up and running. Now, can you build on top of these? Well, yeah, you can. I've seen people build bunkers out of the Jersey barriers. You can also put a concrete block under them. So should have put this together before you here, but a Jersey barrier sand bunker. So you can also build a bunker in the sense of putting block up underneath it. See here, this is how they would put fencing up on the walls. You're not going to put you're going to put a wooden slat fence, or you can actually put the blocks up on top of other blocks because they lock together to give you a little bit more height. Um, but that's neither here nor there. The key is bunker the manures, allow for aeration. Don't sell the compost to the public because that has legal ramifications in most states. You can sell the bulk manure to other farms, but you need to make it easy so that they're not disrupting your normal operations. If you have the opportunity to turn the material a few times and spread it on your fields, that's free money for you. That's free fertilizer for you. But a lot of cases that's not possible. So we want to be able to store it in such a way that we bring in new materials and we uh, ship out to local farms, because this again can be a huge value to local farms, and we're shipping out the materials that we're not disrupting things. We're not interrupting daily operations, because for this particular nonprofit, their highest value is not shoveling manure. Now, yes, it provides uh, a sense of accomplishment and a functional skill that anybody at any skill level or anybody that at any place could just start. Here's a shovel, here's a bucket, scoop, or here's a rake, here's a bucket, scoop. But when I was a kid, I enjoyed that job because it was something I could get up early in the morning to do, and it was a sense of accomplishment. Again, that's not a primary function of their organization, but it's valuable. So if we eliminate everything else and we just give them that, when it comes to manure, all you got to do is get it out of the stall and put it in the bunker, and everything else is taken care of for you. That's a huge value. But right now they've got to get it out of the stall, put it in a pile. They've got to shuffle things all around because it takes up a lot of space. They've got to when it's dry, they can bring people over to haul it away, but people are hauling it away at a 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards at a time, and they're able to produce that much manure in a week because they have a multi-species facility that is available for petting zoo and all the other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to do two things. So number one, make sure you like and subscribe because once our YouTube channel is monetized, we're going to go ahead and assign the specific videos to the nonprofits that we're supporting. Okay. So if money is made talking about manure management and the problems that small farms, petting zoos, and ecotourism locations have when it comes to manure, uh, because this is a facility thing, this is what we do on an estate. There's one of these things at most zoos that you just don't see because they've it's a design system. But my point being, if you've got an equestrian center, you've got a zoo, you've got a larger homestead or larger animals, this could make the difference between a nice clean facility that everybody enjoys themselves or one that has that weird musty smell or that even worse, that weird toxic methane or ammonia smell. But the education is free to use immediately. And if you see this as beneficial, you can actually contribute directly. Now, there's no if you contribute through um, one of the campaigns that we're running. And by the way, if you put it, we'll get you information about the campaigns. It's going to go directly to this particular project, but they could use general help at all. And so if you go to Infinity Acres Ranch and you contribute directly to them, that'll go into keeping the system they got going on right now going. My goal with this program was to show you how it can be more efficient, and through that efficiency, how they can save time, money, and resources. And so I'm not yet worked out how we're going to raise money for them, but you're more than likely uh, able or willing to just cut them a check. And I assure you, it will go to a good cause. This is a very media savvy organization, and the folks over there are, my kid's been to their summer camp. I volunteered time and effort over there. I think this is a very worthy. I'm putting my reputation on the line that this is a very worthy cause. Now, separately, I'm looking to raise. I estimate I could build one of these for about 7K. And so we're going to raise about $7,000 to $12,000 in a separate campaign. So if you go to www.prosperityhomestead.org and you join our newsletter, I'll share information about that particular campaign when the time comes, because we're gonna raise the money. We're gonna go and I've already talked to contractors and things. We're gonna haul off all the material they have, build them a new facility, get the road access. Hopefully, we'll do a roof facility with a roof on it. We're going to look at where their hay storage currently is located and possibly at least have bulk receiving of hay at a different location. We're going to look at how they transport manure back and forth, so that that's as fast and as easy as it needs to be. We may even go over there and set up their safety guidelines and other rules that are necessary, because at the volume that they have, they're not specifically under any regulation, but being aware of the regulations would help them should somebody decide to cause problems. Um, in case somebody comes over and says, "Oh, you got a giant pile of poo, it smells bad." Like if a neighbor complained in the future, we want to make sure we have a clean facility that is easy for them to manage, that is easy for them to work with over time, that serves it frees up time for them to put on mission, and rather on mission than on manure. And then, of course, if I'm hauling the materials off or another farm is bulk hauling the materials off, then those materials are going someplace responsibly. It's going to go on a field that, at a proper time of the season, so it's not getting all rained on. It's going to get turned into worm castings. It's going to get turned into something that is valuable for food security. So again, if you're interested in supporting what we're doing here, this ends the educational session. You want to visit www.prosperityhomestead.org. I would love to surprise Infinity Acres by you doing direct contributions to the organization. Their website is infinityacres.org. You can see a little donate button on the main page. If you put in the comments that you watched this podcast or this is for manure handling, now again, your general contribution is direct. Um, let them know because this is something that's really going to be a huge benefit to them. That right now I don't have the proceeds just to cut them a check, and so um, I will be managing this entire project. You'll get to follow along. So if you want to be a part of that course, you're going to go to Prosperity Homestead. If you want to just be a part of the highly valuable and helpful services that they have, then you're going to go directly to infinityacres.org. I'd love to see your comments below. What do you think about this? Can you see how this can make your farm cleaner, smell better, easier to manage, create additional resources that you can benefit from? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Like I said, when we're monetized, you'll be helping a lot of different nonprofits through the YouTube channel and through we get proceeds on Rumble and different places as well. Thank you for being a part of what we do. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and I'll see you in the next training session. Thank you for being a part of our newsletter.